Solo van life. Is it the ultimate freedom, or is it just really lonely and hard? For the last 4.5 years, I've lived in a van. 3.5 years in Australia, and now almost a year here in Europe. For the most part, it's great, but there's another side to van life that social media doesn't really talk about. The hard part. For every 20-something in a bikini watching a sunset on a beach, there's a 60-year-old woman parked in the woods hoping she doesn't get the knock in the middle of the night, or waking up in a Walmart parking lot. That's the reality too, and it needs to be talked about. In this video, I'm sharing what solo van life in Europe is really like. And I say solo because while Nigel and I do travel together, the reality is that he works away 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. So for half the year, it's just me. I'm doing it alone in a foreign country where I don't speak the language. My last solo van life video really struck a chord. It's our most watched video by far, and that tells me that there's a lot of women out there doing this, or at least seriously considering doing it. And while I'm doing van life by choice, I'm aware that there are people in this position who don't have that choice. So if you're curious about the real day-to-day of living in a van in Europe, this one's for you. Stick around to hear about my biggest challenge, the one I get asked about the most, and how I deal with it. Probably the number one question or concern that people have about solo female van life is around safety. And I often get people ask me, are you afraid traveling on your own, or even telling me that I'm brave for doing this myself. I often wonder if they would ask a man the same question, if it's something specific to women. What is it that I need to be afraid of? In general, what I have found is that people are really kind and friendly. And in all of this time we've spent on the road, we've only ever come across one instance where someone really wanted to scam us and take us for a ride. Now, Nigel and I were together, thankfully. If it had have been me, I don't know that I would have stopped. You may be wondering the same thing. Do I feel afraid? Is it safe to travel as a woman by yourself? And look, I don't think it's any less safe to travel around Europe or to live in a van in Europe than it would be in my home country of Australia. But of course I use my common sense, and I'm always careful. I'm always really aware of my surroundings, and if something feels off, then I just move. If there's some creepy person hanging around, I just go. And that's happened once or twice when I have moved on. Particularly when I'm free camping, I always try and stay around places where there are other people. I use the Park for Night app to find places to park up, whether that's wild camping or staying in campsites, and I always really read the reviews. So, thank you to all those people that have come before me and have left reviews. In terms of camping, I do stay in campsites a lot more here in Europe than I used to in Australia. Check this one out. The weather's not that good today. I'll try and film here tomorrow and show you what it's like. But I'm right by the Bay of Kotor here in Montenegro. And the reason that I do stay in a lot more campsites here in Europe is because, they just don't have the same range of official free camps here. And, we don't have Walmart here in Europe like you might have in the United States, where you can spend the night for free. In some parts of Europe, Germany, France, Italy, they have what are called airs or Stellplatz, camper soster, places that are set up specifically for camper vans, motorhomes, RVs, and we have stayed in quite a few of those. We really don't find them down in this part of Europe though. This one that I'm staying at now looks beautiful, right? Right here on the shores of the Bay of Kotor. Oh, here we go. Can you hear this? This is like perfect timing. But this is what it can look like here. So yeah, I'm parked right at the end of the runway of the airport here. Most of the campsites that we come across this part of the world are not the big sort of caravan parks that we'd be used to in Australia, big commercial type things. It's much more, it's like an enterprising person has set up something in their backyard. Now this one here, the fellow lives over in that little shack over there, but he's just got space here for, I don't know, he could probably fit 10 campers in here, and he just rents it out at €10 a night. There's no services here. Well, there is a dump point and there is water, but and if you want electricity, you've got to run the cord from his house. When I'm on my own, I try and keep the budget for campsite to around €15. So I've spent between 10 and 20 in most places. And then there's free camping or wild camping. Now, I don't really like to do a whole lot of wild camping when I'm on my own, just for that whole safety thing. But I have spent a little bit of time down by the beach here in Montenegro. I think this is tolerated because it's off season, but this place is just beautiful. This is such an absolutely fantastic place to stay. This is where I have been camped up for the last 3 nights. I'll take you down and show you the beach. So there's a beach club here, but it hasn't opened for the season yet. I mean, just look at this. And it's not white sand, it's not black sand, it's grey sand. There's little beach showers there. The toilets aren't open yet, so there's no facilities here for me in my camper, except this incredible beach. I mean, does it get much better? But one of the main reasons that I do stay in campsites is for the services. About those services, so about the toilet and water. So each day I need to come up here and check my water. Right, I've still got plenty of water. My grey water, that's showing empty, that's good. My batteries, 12.7, 12.7. Now that's good because I'm not plugged in here. I'm relying on the sun. And then I've got this app that shows me, I'm 82.3% at the moment. And pulling in 170 watts of solar off the roof. So that's another thing I need to keep an eye on. You know, when you live in a house, you just turn on the tap and you know that water's going to come out. You just plug something into the electricity and you know that you're going to have electricity. It's not like that when you live in a van. And that's one of the hard things about this. It's to constantly be thinking about, I need to check this, I need to check this. And then there's emptying the toilet. I'll spare you the visuals of that one. So we have a Trellino, it's a separating toilet. So this is my little bathroom. I'll give you a quick look with the separating toilet. The Trellino, we highly recommend that. And if you're wondering about smells, if we had smell-o-vision right now, you'd realise, no, it doesn't smell at all. There's actually behind the toilet, can you see that pipe there? So this is the old door from when we had a cassette toilet in there, and we just put the vent in there. It's pretty quiet. We don't notice that noise at all from inside the van. So when I'm on my own, I need to empty the liquids every 3 to 4 days. The solids do last me quite a bit longer than that. And then, of course, I'm cooking with gas, and it's bottled gas. And then this happens. My gas just ran out in the middle of cooking lunch. Got to go and see if I can switch over the bottles. I'm not really sure how to do this. So I do know that I'm going to have to pull out half the stuff out of the back of the van. So this is the gas locker. I've got to move all this stuff out so I can get into it. Okay, so I think I need to move the regulator from there over to the other bottle, and then I'll be fine. Okay, so there we go. I've just moved the regulator over to the other bottle, the full bottle, and yeah, let's go see if it works now. My poor old sandwich, half cooked. Bingo. And this is a big part of the reality of van life, especially solo van life too. You know, the van's not always looking like it's Instagrammable. We really had the Instagrammable van with our own build, but this one, it's just a van. But there's often dirty dishes in the sink, the bed unmade, clothes all over it. Probably the most stressful thing for me about solo van life in Europe is actually driving here. So as an Australian, obviously I'm used to driving on the left-hand side of the road and sitting on the right-hand side of the vehicle, and here it's completely the opposite. So that's been a huge learning curve for me. Now, in and of itself, that would be a learning curve, but when you add in the roads here, and the first time I drove the van was when I dropped Nigel off at the airport in Tirana a couple of tours ago. So I drove in Albania. Now, you've probably heard things about how terrible the roads are in Albania. The roads actually aren't that bad, but the drivers, they can be really impatient and quite aggressive. He's overtaking. Oh God, look, he's oh my God. Oh, shut your eyes. Jesus. I can't believe these drivers. This is the kind of roads I'm driving on now. This has been quite the adventure. Oh God. I had to pull my wing mirror in so this truck could get past. And now that I'm over here in Montenegro, but let me show you the roads I drove on yesterday to give you a bit of an idea of what it's really like. So as you can probably see, there's not really enough room for two on this road. And even worse if you meet a truck. So this is where it's about to get really fun. Cross your fingers. Turtle in the road. So I'm just going to pull over and wait for this truck. Driving up here is even worse. Again, single lane only. And then we merge back onto the main road. Hallelujah. And another part of driving is driving across the borders. Of course, within the EU and the Schengen zone, there's no borders anymore. So you just kind of drive around and sometimes you don't even know when you're going from one country to the next. But where we are now in the Balkans, it's not like that at all. So they do have borders and yeah, we need to kind of get stopped at the border and show our passports and the documents for the van as well. I don't know why, but I always get a little bit nervous whenever I'm crossing a border. You know, not that I'm kind of ever carrying any contraband or doing anything wrong, but I don't know, it's just that whole officialdom thing, I think. It just makes me a little bit nervous. I know that's a bit weird, but anyway. Now, the reason that I have crossed a couple of borders on my own is because of limits to be able to stay. In Albania, as a UK or an Australian passport holder, you get 90 days visa-free entry. And if you want to stay longer than that, you have to apply for a visa, which is kind of quite a long rigmarole process, which I didn't really want to go through. So I have basically spent 77 days in Albania already. And I wanted to keep a few days up my sleeve. When Nigel comes back, we want to go up to the northern area of Albania around Theth. It's supposed to be beautiful there up in the mountains. So I needed to leave Albania, otherwise I was going to overstay. And I have heard about people getting fined if they overstay. So I've just come just over the border into Montenegro, which is a tiny country. I also get 90 days here. Nigel and I will come and tour through here. It's beautiful. And there's quite a bit to see here, but it will only take us a couple of weeks. So look out for that one coming up soon. But anyway, I've come across the border and I'm just hanging out just over the border here. So there has been a little bit of to and fro, and you know, it's kind of a bit nerve-wracking when they ask that question, why are you coming here and how long are you planning to stay? How do I afford this lifestyle? How expensive is it? I'm not rich, not by any stretch of the imagination. And while Nigel does have a good job, I support myself when I am on my own in the van. But to be honest, it's actually really quite cheap to live in a van here in Europe, and particularly down here in the Balkans. If you're not moving around a lot, sightseeing or eating out, that really helps to save a fair bit of money as well. My only real expenses are the campsite fees and my groceries. When Nigel's not here, I don't eat out a lot. I don't do a lot of sightseeing. People often ask, you know, do you go exploring by yourself? Do you travel? No, because I'm working as well when he's working. So that kind of really helps cut costs. And yes, of course, I do prepare my food. People often ask that, do you still make your own food while Nigel's there? I'm like, well, yeah, girl's got to eat. Right, cooking adventures. Tonight I'm making a broccoli pasta. I'm making it up as I go along. There's my broccoli. Got some pine nuts. It's going to have a lot of garlic and Parmesan cheese. But look at the backdrop for where I'm making it. Okay, that van's in the way, but sun's just about to set here on the beach. So beautiful here. I've been swimming every day. I was out in the sun a bit today. I might be a little bit burnt. No, I'm not. I'm very careful. I don't want to get burned. And there is the finished product. Looks delicious. I hope it tastes as good as it looks and smells. So I do cook, but there's a lot of leftovers. It's pretty boring, to be honest. So yeah, in terms of personal expenses, I can live well and truly on less than €1,000 a month. I mean, obviously then there's the things on top of that, like the insurance for the van and various different business expenses. But in terms of campsite fees, groceries, things like my phone bill, definitely well less than €1,000 a month, and less than I would spend living at home in Australia. Probably less than it would cost you if you're living in the United States or definitely the UK. It's expensive there. For those of you who are interested, we are going to do a video on, how we make money while we're on the road, other than Nigel's job. So speaking of money, obviously there's logistics involved in this lifestyle with currencies, also things like, staying connected, SIM cards, road tolls, vignettes. So there's a lot of kind of logistical planning that goes into this lifestyle, particularly when we are crossing borders. Now, obviously within the European Union and the Schengen zone, everything is fairly similar. So, they all use the euro. Well, most of them use the euro. There's a couple of countries that don't. So I've kind of got to the point where I think in terms of euros now. But there's a few different currencies down here. In Albania, it was the lek. 100 lek is €1, so that's easy for me to do that conversion. And it will be interesting as we travel through Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, Bulgaria, where we've got to get used to marks and dinar and lev. That's going to keep my old maths brain exercised. Now, a lot of the European countries have toll roads where you pay as you go through, and some of them do require you to buy a vignette or like a little sticker that you put on the windshield, which allows you to drive on their highways. Switzerland is one that comes to mind, and I find it helpful to always do a bit of a Google search and find all that stuff out before we go into those countries. And so that's one of the things that I have been working on, is these travel guides for people who are planning to come to these countries, so you've got all that information at your fingertips before you get there. One of the things that I have found quite surprising here in the Balkan countries especially is that a lot of the businesses are still very cash focused. Obviously, if you go to a supermarket or a big store or a gas station, petrol station, places like that, you can pay with card, but most everywhere else they do want you to pay with cash. So campsites, small little fruit and veggie shops, the local bakeries, those sort of places would all prefer cash. Now, if you watched my Solo Vanlife video from Australia, you'll know that one of my biggest challenges there was all the mice that I had in the van. And for some reason, they always came when Nigel was away. So that was a bit of a challenge for me, getting rid of the mice. Now, fingers crossed and touch wood, we have not had any mice here in Europe. Down in this part of the world, I think that's largely because there are so many stray cats around. Like, they're just everywhere. And yeah, I'm just thankful that they are keeping the mouse population away. However, for the first time I did get ants in the van. So 3.5 years in a van in Australia and I never had ants. And now look at this. And where are they? In my bed. Bloody hell, I don't know where they're coming in. I don't know what they're doing. I'm going to get rid of these ants. Ants over there. Down on the floor, they're everywhere. I think part of the reason is because I didn't wash my dishes last night. But the reality is I have to turn on the hot water, and when it's like 8:30 at night and I've forgotten to turn on the hot water, I'm like, oh, I've got to wait a whole hour for the water to heat up. Maybe half an hour, I don't know. Anyway, it's on now. I'm going to wash the dishes, and I think I'm going to have to remove the bed and try and figure out where they're coming. If anyone's got any tips, I don't know if they have ant rid here in Montenegro, but I need help to get rid of these ants. In terms of other wildlife, when people think about Australia, they think about all our scary wildlife, and so many people say, oh, I could never go there. because of crocodiles and sharks and spiders and snakes. I tell you what, I am so much more scared of bears than I am of any of those things. Bears chase you, you know, I'm like really scared of them. And there are certain parts of Europe here where there are bears still. So I am a little bit nervous about doing some of the hikes that we're going to be doing soon. And that's another reason why I don't really go hiking by myself, because I am quite scared of bears. In terms of snakes though, I did see what I thought was a snake the other day, and this was at one of the campsites that I was at here in Montenegro, but there were a couple of Dutch biologists staying in the campsite as well, and they were so excited about seeing, well, they weren't snakes, they were legless lizards. Now, I always thought lizards had legs, right? But these things are actually lizards. They still creep me out though. For me, definitely the hardest part about this lifestyle, and the one that I do get asked about a lot, is loneliness. People often ask, do you get bored? Do you get lonely? And the answer is, yeah, I do get lonely. Being away from my friends and family, and Nigel for half the time, is the biggest sacrifice that I've had to make in choosing this lifestyle. It's tough, you know, like I'll spend 6 weeks on my own, and I'm in these countries in Europe where I don't speak the language. Sometimes I'll go for days without speaking to another person other than, you know, maybe an interaction in a grocery store or something like that. When I do meet other campers, 9 times out of 10, then English isn't their first language. And so, you know, while we can have a basic conversation, often it is just that, just a basic conversation. Where are you going? What have you enjoyed? That sort of thing. But yeah, I really do miss that human interaction. And, you know, poor Nigel, he gets back and I feel like all I do is I just talk the whole first day that he's here. However, having said that, next week I am going to London to see my son for his birthday, which just happens to be on the same day as Mother's Day. So, you know, that'll be probably a couple of weeks ago by the time you're watching this. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be amazing. So I hope this has answered any questions that you might have about solo van life in Europe. If you've got any more questions, feel free to pop them in the comments down below, or you can always reach out to us on email as well. Thank you so much for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.